This is Wycombe Sound.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of The Art Show here on Wycombe Sound 106.6 FM. My name's Dane Cobain, I am your host, and this is the show where we play a bit of local music. We have a different guest on each week who's related back to sort of creativity in the arts. This week we're going to be joined by Emma Rosen, who is an author. I actually know her through YouTube. She does AuthorTube and BookTube videos where she talks about books, and she's got a memoir called Milk, which is like her memoirs as a breastfeeding mother, with a bit of like guidance there as well. It's actually a really interesting book. I mean, I'm a guy and I still found it really interesting and quite thought-provoking as well. And she also has a children's book out called Lily the Limpet Gets Lost, which is super cute and adorable, and definitely want to check out if you've got kids of your own. So we'll be chatting to Emma a little later on in the show. As always, you can find us on Facebook by just searching for The Art Show Wycombe Sound, and you can also contact me here on the studio by dropping me an email on dane.cobain@wycombesound.org.uk. That's dane.cobain@wycombesound.org.uk. Always happy to hear feedback, etc., and I particularly want to hear from performers, really, poets, musicians, anyone who's got some recorded stuff that we can play on the show. Even storytellers if you're a writer. In fact, I'm going to throw this challenge to you right now. I know a few of my writer friends are listening, so if you're a writer, see if you can come up with a sort of 5-minute longish short story. I think so Google informs me that the average reading speed's about 200 words per minute, so I think if you're a writer and you can write a short story of maybe 800 to 1,000 odd words and record yourself reading that should come out roughly similar in length to a song, and we can get it played on here. So I'm throwing out the gauntlet there to all of my writer friends to get stuff submitted, and we'll see what we can do. Maybe we'll have a special show where we listen to only the stories. I was actually thinking about maybe reading one of my stories, but I've gone in and investigated, and apparently none of them are radio friendly whatsoever, so we're not going to do that. I do think it's an interesting topic to cover though, because short stories, they don't get as much love as I think they should. From a writer's perspective, I think a lot of writers write short stories, but they don't really have so much of a market, and it's sort of notoriously difficult to get, especially traditionally published, with a short story collection. The only way, if you're like a new writer, that you're going to get published with a short story collection is if you're amazing, and preferably you've won several like awards for best short story in competitions or something in the past. So it's difficult to get known, which is a shame really, because I feel as though short stories are kind of perfect for today's fast-paced environment, and there's things you can read on a 15-minute commute or something like that. You can even get as I was just saying, I guess, for the radio, short clips of them that you can listen to. They're kind of perfect length for podcasts and things like that. So I do feel as though short stories should be having like a resurgence in popularity. I find as well, like, as a reader, I personally really like short stories. I mean, one of my favourite authors is Agatha Christie, and my favourite Agatha Christie books are the Miss Marple books, and my favourite Miss Marple book was Miss Marple's Final Cases, which was short stories. I've been reading F. Scott Fitzgerald recently, and while I do really like The Great Gatsby, I think some of his short stories have been like the highlights of what I've read of him. One of my favourite authors is Graham Greene as well, and I got into him through one of his short story collections. Actually, in Donnie Darko, the short story The Destructors is used as like a plot device, and so I really like that movie, so I ended up picking up 21 Stories, which is the story collection that that story is featured in, and that's kind of how I got into Graham Greene. I also think short stories are a pretty cool art form. I mean, you can do all kinds of different things with them. I think one of the cool uses was when, and I think this was Agatha Christie, somebody wrote a murder mystery anyway that was set in a real place, and it was like either serialized or it was just a short story just published in one sitting, and it gave like clues that led you to real world places, and you could go and follow the trail and hopefully win a certain number of guineas. I think it was guineas. I guess as well, actually, like the latest evolution of the short story are those, the mobile phone games that you see that people play, where they're kind of like almost like choose your own adventures, but I guess you can add a few more features. I don't know. I don't play any of these apps. I actually see a lot of jobs where people are advertising for writers to come and write the plots for them. But yeah, I guess that's like the new short story, especially in terms of like adoption. Those apps are getting used by way more people than actually read short story collections. But, you know, I think it's cool. It gives writers a new challenge, a new generation of writers who are all writing short stories for smartphone applications. I wonder how well they'll age. Speaking of short story collections, this week's guest is a writer, so we'll be chatting to her later on. Her name is Emma Rosen. She's written a couple of books, so she's written Milk, which is a memoir about breastfeeding and, you know, becoming a parent for the first, second and third time, I think. Definitely at least the first and second times. And she also has a children's book out called Lily the Limpet Gets Lost. So we're going to be chatting to her a little later on. So we're going to listen to, I don't know whether you'd call this, well, I suppose it is local music, but it's part of a bigger picture. So there's a local group called Sign Dance Collective. Well, they're international, actually. They have sort of members here and there. But the Sign Dance Collective, their thing is essentially, it's bringing together music and sign language and dance and art and really all these different art forms and bringing them all together. So they're currently working on something called the Time Project, and they've been posting on their Facebook page, if you just search Sign Dance Collective International, a whole bunch of these little, I guess you'd call them vignettes. This is all supported by the Arts Council England, and they're getting a lot of different creatives all to work together on things. So for example, here we have Time Project number 3, so film and choreography by Isolt Avila. I think that's how you pronounce his surname, sorry Isolt. Spoken word by Lionel M. Macaulay, he's a fantastic poet, I've seen him perform before. Additional film by Angelina Schwamelin, and editing by Robert Corcoran. So we're going to have a quick listen to that now. I mean, obviously, if you can check it out online, then you get the video performance as well. But it's certainly better than nothing. And then we're going to listen to, as well, they've got these other little tiny sort of, what are they calling them? They're calling them portraits, I believe. Canvas. So then we're going to play the Time Project Canvas number 2, Marking the Passage of Time by Twangling Jack Ford, who is a long-term friend of the show. So let's check those out.
Okay, now gather around so I can talk to the gods and goddesses of the congregation. When you see melanin shining, you can't tell who the goddess is. You see, we were all modest then. The devils wore Prada and maybe had an identity, but ID profane was your only amenity. So I declare royalty for all the sovereignties, to all the times we were quarantined and left alone with our own minds to feed. Now most are just watching fees with no mouths to feed. Time to find a way to generate fees and reverse being gentrified. I'll let all these words diversify, so you can see how much your soul is divine in its prime. Ain't no time to prioritize the primaries when life comes at you fast. And I know you don't want to finish last or dwell on the past, but history repeats itself. Don't cheat yourself, because putting out acid energy through your mouth will only eat itself. Never predict the predicate before you educate and advocate. No time to contemplate when we can compensate our minds and concentrate on our own mental states. We live in states where values determined by status, when they clear hiatus, turning into statistic. Let's look at the logistics. See, we were niggas before niggas, supreme rulers. Mansa Musa, the first African king worth 400 billion. See, we can't forget Queen Nefertiti. When we see strength, beauty, and power, then you know a beautiful woman has come. Let that kingdom come, or that will be done. But when you see BS on your VHS, unless CNN, if you don't CNN, to the TNT blown up all over USA, A, B, C. We decide on who we want to coincide with. We have to abide the sweet side while listening to Mary J. Blige so we can oblige. But what's your theory? We as a people need to stop with the theatrics and the antics and figure out how we can come together and take over the atlas. Becoming actress, activist, but we choose to drink activists and act as if anyone owes us anything. The only thing we owe ourselves is dignity. Instead of digging through the internet system miserably, we have the ability to combat the bigotry, mentally, emotionally, and physically. So we can figure out how we can be bigger than me, bigger than us. Let's put trust in one another, in our brothers, sisters, and mothers. Let's encourage our fathers and father figures instead of trying to figure out what the next person's figures are about. I mean, forget clout. Let's take the high route so you can sprout. As your energy taps into your energy, then that negativity becomes obsolete. Then it becomes a memory of a reverie.
They've taken away the parks where kids play. There's no profit in trees and grass. And instead of houses and streets, we're surrounded by canyons of concrete and glass. And it's changing so fast. And it's changing so fast. We tell ourselves there's some kind of plan. Though we came from primordial swine, it's got nothing to do with the essence of man. We're just marking the passage of time.
Love music, love talk, love Wycombe Sound.
Being a foster carer isn't just about providing vulnerable children a safe home. It's about loving, listening and guiding. It's about changing their lives. If there's space in your home and you have the time and patience, then Nexus Fostering wants to hear from you. We're your local fostering agency, rated outstanding by Ofsted, and we're here to support you in supporting them with full training and a competitive allowance. For a career that really makes a difference, visit nexusfostering.co.uk or call 0800 389 0143.
Hi, it's Pippa here. Join me every morning at 7 o'clock for the Wycombe Sound Breakfast Show, featuring all your usual favourites, including Carefree Karaoke, The Breakfast Banger, Chickadita's Choice, and, in an effort to keep your morning routine as normal as possible, we'll be taking the register at 8:45. I'll name check all the people that have been in touch with me every morning. So why not tweet me, send me a message on Facebook, or email studio@wycombesound.org.uk. Don't be late now, and no skulking behind the bike sheds. That's the Wycombe Sound Breakfast Show every weekday morning from 7.
This is Wycombe Sound.
When you were here before, couldn't look you in the eye. the shower special, but I'm a creep. I'm a widow. What the hell am I doing here? I don't belong here. I don't belong here.
This is Wycombe Sound.
We just listened to Time Project number 3 by Sign Dance Collective International, whole group of people involved in that. And we also listened to the Time Project Canvas number 2 featuring Twangling Jack Ford. Again, this is a Sign Dance Collective International project. It was called Marking the Passage of Time, that one. And then after that, we had Screaming Cherry with their cover of Creep by Radiohead. Now, I have been trying to prioritise original tracks where possible here on Wycombe Sound, but I thought that one was a really appropriate one to play because the vocalist in that band is Emma Rosen, who is this week's guest. We will be chatting a little bit about her band, Screaming Cherry, but also we're going to mostly be talking about her writing career, her books, and a little bit about YouTube and BookTube as well. So look forward to that. Over to Emma. So the first question that I ask everybody is, what was the last book that you read and what did you think of it?
The last book that I read, I'm trying to think what I read. Oh, I know what it was. It was a book about cycling, which was called Why Investment in Cycling is Needed by Dara Casey, who was my Patreon when I had Patreon for about 3 months. And it was really good. It was a little book, one of those ones that you can read in about 20 minutes. But loads and loads of facts in there. And he's also put the PDF, the ebooks, available for free. So I think that's really great if people are interested in that field. And because it's kind of got a bit of a political slant looking at the importance of funding, it's great that people can read that for free. So yeah, it was really good. Quick read, but enjoyable.
I was going to say, it sounds like it's quite accessible as well because it's a quick read, so it's a good little introduction.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really easy, quick little read. Yeah, very good.
And so you mentioned that you knew the author through Patreon, and I know you try and read indie where you can. Why do you think it's important that people read indie authors, and who are some of your favourites?
I think because a lot of people are a bit put off, I think. And so by reading indie and by publicising what you read and trying to put more and more voice out there about it, it just helps because it's difficult to market yourself as an indie author. So other people reading it, other people using their platforms to talk about it is really, really helpful. And other people recommending your books, it just all adds to it because you obviously don't have a big publishing house behind you with a marketing budget. So I think it's just all supporting each other. It's great. My favourites, I don't know actually. Probably yourself and Charlie, who you've had on here before, Charlie Heathcote.
Charlie's who I always say is one of my favourites as well. So he's fantastic, isn't he? Cool. And mentioning your writing, how long have you been writing for?
Well, I started writing my first book, Milk, in 2010. It took me a long time to actually publish it. I published it in 2018. But I mean, I've always been writing bits and pieces here and there. It was just the first thing that I sat down and seriously, rather than just writing a few pages and getting bored with it, or maybe writing something short, actually trying really hard to make this something good. That was the first time that I did that.
Cool. And do you want to tell us a little bit about Milk? And I'd like to know kind of the process behind it as well, especially as you said, kind of 8 years between conception and publication. So what did you spend those 8 years doing?
Well, it's right because it's a book about breastfeeding my children because when I had my eldest child in 2010, I kind of expected everything to be very straightforward and just easy, I guess. And it wasn't. And there were all sorts of hurdles that I encountered. And an awful lot of them I found were things that were kind of societal rather than anything else. And I found that very frustrating that it's breastfeeding isn't something that's very well understood, just generally in the general population, or well, I don't know, it's just, I mean, it's not all that common for a start, certainly not in the UK anyway. So as I started reading more into it, I became very passionate that it was important that there was more information out there, but also more voices, more stories, because we learn through storytelling. So that kind of idea of putting out my own experience. And I think also as a new mum, you can become quite insular. So being able to read somebody else's story when maybe you're in a time in your life when you're really not seeing that many other people. So yeah, I started writing that when my eldest was about 3 months old, and then having 3 children in between that whole process, I was just writing little bits here and there. I probably finished it in about 2016, I would say, and then went through the process of editing it and then looking at my publishing options before I finally went forward with indie publishing in 2018.
Cool. It's interesting because it almost reminds me of what you were saying about that, you know, your pick for the last book that you read, because it sounds like both of them are kind of, you know, they're sort of almost introductions to the field, but also they've got that political lean to them as well, where, you know, it kind of confronts you as the reader and makes you ask, well, you know, why isn't there more information about this? Why aren't there more stories out there?
Yeah, and I think when you put a personal side to it, it makes it more accessible. I just, it kind of highlights the issues in just a more personal way. That's what I hope anyway. Cool.
So actually, I'm just going to build on from that. So I wondered, like, what are some of the biggest pieces of misinformation out there about breastfeeding? Like some of the biggest myths that you had to dispel?
I think things have definitely got better since I started writing, and over the course of the book I sort of talk about the differences between when I had each of my children. An awful lot of people think that you have to move on to formula, which is obviously fine if that's what you want to do, but there's almost a perception that at some time you do move on to it, and that's a choice thing. There's no reason why you have to. You can continue breastfeeding if that's what you want. So I definitely think that there's some people think, okay, when the baby's whatever age it is, then that's when they're supposed to be weaned from it. So yeah, I think that's a big one. Cool.
And so you mentioned a little bit about the publishing process. Who was your cover artist, if you had one, and what did you find? What were the biggest challenges of putting the book out there?
My cover artist was a company called 8 Little Pages, who at the time had been recommended by Jenna Moresi when she launched The Saviour's Champion, which I really want to read, actually. I still haven't got around to it. So I used them and was very happy with the artwork. Unfortunately, the company's now gone bust. So there's sort of bankruptcy proceedings going on there. They can't be used at the moment. But I mean, for me, it's important to kind of work on recommendations from other indies. Or, I mean, for example, the editor that I used, Kim Kimber, she is a member of the SFEP, the Society for Editors and Proofreaders. I felt like that was an endorsement, because I think you could easily be tripped over, you know, by using somebody who, you don't know, you're new to this field. So by using people that other people have used, or that have kind of the credentials, really helps.
Yeah, for sure, yeah. And then, so I guess, because then after that you moved on to Lily the Limpet. So that's quite a change from sort of non-fiction to fiction. So what was that like, going from one to the other for you?
It was good fun, but I find it quite strange when I do events and I've got these 2 books on my table that are completely and utterly different. But it was just working on something else that I was passionate about, really, and it was an idea I'd had for a while. So it was a fun project to work on, and I've just last week, I think, completed the first draft of the next book in that series and sent that to Evgenia, who illustrated it, who's my sister-in-law. To see how she feels.
Cool. And so what was that like, working with your sister-in-law on the illustrations? Because how did you work together? Did you just give her the book and let her run free, or did you have ideas of how certain pages should look?
I guess a bit of both. Initially, I was going to illustrate it myself, and I started trying, I was quite proud of what I'd done. And then I was showing my mum and my brother.
Yeah.
And my brother kind of looked at me and went, yeah, it's all right, but I'll ask Jenny for you. So we call her Jenny.
Okay.
There's like an anglicised version of Evgenia. And so that evening, I kind of went, oh, don't worry about it, I'll keep trying by myself. And then that evening, he sent over a load of her artwork. And I kind of went, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I think Jenny can do this. So, and then basically I sent her a load of information. I sent her the draft of the book, and then the kind of pictures of the different kinds of creatures that are in it, and information about, you know, what you'd expect to find in a British rock pool and all that kind of stuff, and what I'd envisioned of it, because so she's Russian, and you know it's going to be different anyway, and she doesn't necessarily have that knowledge. So anyway, I just sent her a load of information. Then she asked me any questions she had, and then she sent me sort of concepts of what Lily would look like and what Billy and Granny would look like, and sort of just asked me anything that she needed, and then she kind of ran with it, because what she was producing was so amazing. Just everything she sent me, I was like, yep, great, keep going.
Awesome.
So,
and it's great when something works out like that as well, because you just sort of build up so much momentum and get so excited about it, and then I think that kind of spills over in the final project, you know? Like, if it was the other way around and, you know, she felt like obliged to finish doing these illustrations because you're a family member and you've given her a deadline and stuff, it would have shown in the drawings, and they wouldn't have been as you know, as vibrant as they are.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't believe it when I first saw them, and she... I wasn't expecting, you know, so I'd seen bits and I'd seen a couple of pages, but I hadn't seen the whole thing. When she handed me the folder of all the work, I was blown away.
Amazing.
So I'm very excited that she's thinking about working on another project with me.
Cool. Can you talk about that, or is it still top secret?
Can do. It's going to be about a scallop.
Okay.
So,
cool.
Scallops are quite cool creatures. They have 100 eyes, or around 100 eyes. Mm-hmm. They can't see all that well, but they can see a bit, and they're quite shy, so they hide in the sand a lot. Yeah. And if you disturb them, they actually can swim. They sort of clap their shells together and can swim away. So the concept of the story is going to be that the scallop is going to alert some children about a danger by kind of swimming around. So the whole idea of the series is to bring awareness to sea creatures that kind of nobody cares about all that much.
Yeah, because they're not cute and
I think everybody's excited by dolphins and seahorses and all this, so I kind of choose the things that look like they're not all that interesting.
You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM at Wycombe Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain. I'm here in conversation with author Emma Rosen, and she's also a vocalist as well in a band called Screaming Cherry, and this is their cover of Stop by Sam Brown.
All that you give me. Did you never worry that I've come to depend on you? I gave you all the love I had in me. Now I found your light, and I can't believe it's true. Wrapped in her arms, I see you cross the street, and I can't help but wonder if she knows what's going on. You talk of love, but you don't know how it feels when you realize that you're not the only one. Whoa, you'd better stop before you tear me all apart. You'd better stop before you go and break my heart. Ooh, stop. tried to walk away, but it's not that easy when your soul is torn in two. So I just resign myself to it every day. Now all I can do is to leave it up to you. Oh, you better stop before you tear me all apart. You'd better stop before you go and break my heart. Ooh, you better stop. If you love me, now's the time to be sorry. I won't believe that you'd walk out on me, baby. Oh, you'd better stop before you tear me all apart. You'd better stop before you go and break my heart. Ooh, you better stop, baby, stop, baby, stop, baby, stop. Ooh, you better stop, baby, stop, baby, stop, baby, stop.
This is Wycombe Sound.
That was Screaming Cherry with their cover of Stop by Sam Brown. And we're here chatting to their vocalist, who is also an author. Her name is Emma Rosen. And we'll go straight back over to the interview. It's quite interesting because, I mean, I would say that with Milk what you did is it was quite an informational book that also entertained, whereas these are almost the other way around, where they're, you know, entertaining books for kids that also inform, you know? So is that something you consciously try and do to blend the two?
Yeah, definitely. I like to have that information there, and I kind of try and say to people they're educational, but they're not really educational books. It's that thing where you learn just through the story. It's not, you know, over the top teaching kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay, so kind of a more general question, but I thought you'd be an interesting person to ask. How do you think motherhood has changed during COVID-19 and a sort of global pandemic?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's so as I say, I've got 3 children, and I mean everybody's situation is different. But for us, I do have all 3 children at home because neither I nor my husband are key workers. Because his business is what pays our bills. He's the one who's had to work, and I'm the one who had to take a step back and just do what I can when I have the time. We're very fortunate that we can do that. I know there's so many families where, you know, both parents are working full time and they're trying to work from home with kids running around the house and all that. So we have been very fortunate in that. But I don't know, I'm kind of trying to look on the bright side that we got to spend lots of time together. And I mean, when they're at school all the time and you're running here, there and everywhere, you kind of can lose that.
Yeah.
I mean, not lose the bond, but I suppose not maybe know each other so well, if you know what I mean. So I think that's been very good. We're definitely communicating better with each other. But today was cute. Today was their last day of term. As we're having this conversation, and we held a little graduation ceremony.
Cool.
So because I felt like we needed a full stop. You know, we've been through this whole thing together, and just to kind of say that's the end of the homeschool thing, and fingers crossed they'll be back in September.
Yeah.
But
well, we'll see.
Yeah. It's difficult. It's that whole balancing thing, and for me, it's frustrating because I'm quite a self-motivated person to then know that I've got all these things, all these creative ideas I want to work on. I was hoping to have brought out a book in August. It's nowhere near ready, and all these things, and just kind of chill out about it and just kind of say, well, that's the way it is, and it's quite hard.
Well, I mean, that kind of leads me into a question which you might struggle to answer because you might not know how you do this, but like you're kind of like me in that you're just busy with so many different things. So obviously you've got your books, you've got your band as well, which hopefully we'll talk about in a minute. You've got your YouTube channel. You've been asked if you'll do a radio show on your local radio station, right? So and you've got your family, and so how do you choose like where to focus? I guess where to focus your efforts.
I suppose it's kind of what I'm interested in a lot of the time. Although I try to put. I'm always kind of interested in community projects, and I'm on some charity committees as well, and I try to do what I can there but not use my work time to do that. It's quite hard to balance my time, you know, if the kids are at school or whatever, and then I'm using that time to work on like community work. It's quite or like hobbies or it's difficult, but so I suppose most of my focus is probably on writing and all the associated like YouTube and everything around that. But yeah, I mean, for me, because of the family, it's just a case of blocking my time. And before then, I was always a bit of a procrastinator and would work into the night and that kind of thing. But obviously, I can't do that anymore. So when I've got a moment, I have to try and take it and be quite strict with myself about doing that. But it's funny, my husband and I were just talking about it today of like, imagine if we had no children, all the time we would have, and we could do whatever we wanted. And it's quite funny. But I think that's it. It's just being quite organised with my time, and I'm a real list writer as well. I kind of plan everything out and know what I have to get done by when, which I think other people can find quite annoying when I'm hassling them, because especially when it's my own self-set deadlines. I'm like, no, I need this now because tomorrow I'm meant to be doing this. And so
But I think in a way you have to be like that, because otherwise things slip, and then you standards slip, and people again. That's how you end up with people rushing to get a cover design done, and then the cover looks terrible because they only had 2 days to do it or something.
Yeah, I guess I'm quite time poor. It's always just the thing for me, and obviously more so at the moment. So I have to be quite organised. And funnily enough, today my husband took the kids out for a couple of hours, and ordinarily I'd work for that whole time, and I'm just a bit burnt out at the moment, with it being the end of term and everything. I just thought, no, I just need to sit for a bit. So
which is important too. I mean, it's good for your mental health to take a break and whatnot too. So
definitely. That's all become very important over lockdown, hasn't it?
So just briefly, can you tell us about your band? Tell us what you're called and who's in it and some of the tunes you play.
So we're called Screaming Cherry. So the current lineup is me, and then there's a guy called Simon who's on drums. There's Pete on bass and Colin on guitar.
Cool.
We've been that lineup for the most part of, I think, 13 years.
Nice, yeah.
But there was a period of time when I left when I had my two eldest kids. When I had my youngest, they only allowed me to have 6 months off.
Okay.
They were like, no, we can't live without you. Well, I don't think they worded it like that, but anyway.
That's what they meant.
So we play covers, we play rock covers from all sorts of time periods. And the main thing for us is we're just really, really good friends. And for us, it's more about the social time together and that it's like a night out than anything else. We're not looking to, make it big in music or anything. We probably play gigs about once a month. We've all got families and busy jobs and stuff. So, it's kind of, it's about that friendship for us. But it's good. I like it. I think we respond musically really well to each other. We've got an interesting kind of set of talents. I play a bit of saxophone now and then, which is kind of cool. And one of the things I think we're quite known for and that we get recognised for, when people walk into a pub where we're playing, they're like, oh, because Simon's drum kit is the biggest drum kit I've ever seen in my life.
Amazing.
It's an orchestral drum kit, and he's quite tall, so he sits on a really high stool. All his drums are massive. He claims that it's no bigger than any other drum kit because his arms are only so long.
Right.
But I don't believe him.
Yeah. What have you got planned next? You've kind of answered it, but if you want to give us any more detail on what your current projects are.
So, as I said, I've sent off a draft of the next Seaside Stories to Jenny, so hopefully that will appear at some point. I've been working over lockdown on illustrating a book that's, the concept of it is going back to the breastfeeding thing to kind of tie in my work a bit more, but it will be a children's book where the idea is it's a little girl asking questions and her auntie explaining to her about all different animals and how they breastfeed.
That's great, yeah.
Just as like a fun little kids information book, and as I say, it kind of brings my work together a little bit more. So we'll see once I put that together and format it whether the illustrations look okay. At this point I'm not sure. What else? I've just bought a new microphone, which is very exciting, so I'm hopefully going to start working on audiobooks again. I tried before and it didn't work, but I have every hope that this time I've got the technology for it. So that'll be something hopefully I can do with Milk and Lily the Limpet. And I've also got a second draft of a fiction, of a contemporary fantasy fiction sat on my laptop that I need to go back to and do some more work on.
Cool.
So I don't know what's going to come out first and what, but those things will all happen at some point.
Yeah, the first one will be whatever's ready, I should imagine.
Exactly.
Cool. And where can people find you to, follow you online to find out more?
Probably the best place to start is my website, which is www.emmarosenbooks.co.uk. That'll lead you everywhere. But basically, I'm Emma Rosen Books on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube.
Cool. And you've got your books available in both paperback and e-copy on Amazon, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, that's right. The usual online retailers or on my website.
You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM at Wycombe Sound. My name is Dane Cobain. We've just been in conversation with author Emma Rosen, and this is Papa Truck with their Lockdown Sessions version of Chiltern Hills.
Chiltern Hills are calling me, Chiltern Hills, where I was free, Chiltern Hills, why'd I leave? Chiltern Hills, the memories I have remain. Places I knew when I was a boy, traveling from Nettle to Pain. Chiltern Hills are calling me, Chiltern Hills, where I was free. Chiltern Hills, but tell me why I leave. Then Chiltern city life of mine gets me down. Well, I know I'll get back to them hills one day, being a distinct little town. Chiltern Hills are calling me, Chiltern Hills, where I was free. Chiltern Hills, but tell me why'd I leave? Them Chiltern I would return one day. Would she let me stay? Chilton Hills, a calling me. Chilton Hills, where I was free. Chilton Hills, but tell me why darling. Then Chilton Hills, a calling me. Chilton Hills, where I was free. Chilton Hills, but tell me why darling. Then Chilton Hills.
This is Wycombe Sound.
That was Papa Truck with Chilton Hills. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM at Wycombe Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and we've reached that point of the show where I recommend some stuff to keep you going. So we have a TV show or a movie, a book, and an album each week. So the book I'd like to recommend this week is Murder at the Vicarage by Agatha Christie. I don't know how I've missed this one because I'm a big Agatha Christie fan, and it's just something that I've somehow not got round to picking up, you know? Which is a shame because, as I say, I'm a really, really big fan of her stuff. And this is the first Miss Marple book, and Miss Marple is my favourite of her characters. Marple faux life, she's way better than Hercule Poirot. Just because Poirot's kind of arrogant, you know? I mean, he's designed to be arrogant, but it doesn't make it any less irritating for me as a reader. So yeah, I've always been more of a fan of Marple, and as this is the first book that she's introduced in, it was really interesting for me to go to it because, like, she's this character who I almost grown up with, you know, and so it was just strange to go back to the point at which she was first introduced. But it works really well as a standalone mystery, and you know, it's actually not a bad place to start with Agatha Christie if you've never read any of her books before. I mean, a couple of my favourites are And Then There Were None and Death on the Nile as well. Both of those definitely recommended as your first, you know, Christie book. But equally, nothing wrong with going with Murder at the Vicarage and getting started with Miss Marple. For this week's movie, I'm going to recommend an oldie. I watched Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels the other day. It's like, I guess, Guy Ritchie's breakout film because I think it came out before Snatch. And I don't know, I was just watching it and I was constantly amazed by... I'd forgotten about loads of stuff, basically. It's one of those movies that when I was young I had on VHS and used to just watch over and over again pretty much. But I'd forgot Sting was in it. I'd forgot Danny John Jules was in it, which was a nice surprise because I've been watching a lot of Red Dwarf recently. There's actually a Red Dwarf special that's just come out that will probably be what I recommend next week. Yeah, also Vinnie Jones and what's his name, Jason Statham. They both kind of got their break with that film. It's certainly what introduced them to an American audience. But then Vinnie Jones is a former footballer and Jason Statham is a former diver, so I thought that was kind of funny. Yeah, just a lot of, you know, people showing up in it that I'd totally forgotten about. So I'm sure there are people now, like, in it who make little cameos who I've, you know, completely forgotten about already, so maybe I need to rewatch it. Also a fantastic soundtrack. So yeah, if you're looking for a movie to watch, go watch that, although maybe do it when the kids aren't awake and around, because it's pretty violent. And for this week's album, you can take your pick out of either Bottoms of Barrels or Wild Like Children by Tilly and the Wall. They're kind of an indie folk band, but they're like noteworthy because instead of having a drummer, they do have a drummer on tour and on some tracks, but they also have a tap dancer who plays percussion for them. So obviously their live performance, you get this sort of visual spectacle of the tap dancer, but also it does add this like to the songs that gives it their own unique sound, really. So yeah, as I said, they're this indie folk band. They're quite joyful in terms of their music. Even their sad songs sound kind of happy, and they're just quite melodic and quite quirky. As I say, because of their visual element, you might want to check out some of their live performances as well, and get one where you can watch their tap dancer in action. So that's about it for me for this week's edition of The Art Show. As always, thank you to everyone whose music I've played. Thank you to Emma Rosen for chatting to me today as well. You can find us on Facebook if you just search for The Art Show, Wycombe Sound. You should be able to find us. And you can also email me here at the studio. Just drop me a line on dane.cobain@wycombesound.org.uk. That's dane.cobain@wycombesound.org.uk. Every episode is also available on Catch Up, on Spotify and iTunes and that kind of stuff. Or obviously we're on every Tuesday at 7 p.m. We're also repeated here on Wycombe Sound on Monday nights if you can't tune in for whatever reason. Alright guys, I've got some really exciting news, because this is basically what the whole point of this show was supposed to be originally, which was to talk about local arts and the events that are happening. Obviously coronavirus kicked in, and so we haven't really been able to cover that. But at Wycombe Arts Centre, we have a lockdown art exhibition coming up called Creativity During a Pandemic. So there's a little bit of info here. Wycombe Arts Centre is gradually opening its doors again for safe activities both inside and out. To kick things off, we'll be hosting a lockdown art exhibition from the 8th to the 23rd of August 2020, representing creativity during the lockdown period. Exhibits will include paintings, sculptures, crafts, photography, film, writing, music and songs. We're also proud to exhibit Sign Dance Collective, our company in residence, and their Arts Council funded lockdown project Time, which represents a range of international creative collaborations and which will be screened throughout the exhibition period. So key info here, we have the opening times 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. at weekends and 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. Wednesdays and Fridays. It'll be free entry, although visitor donations are accepted and indeed encouraged. And some of the works will be available for sale as well. But even if not, it's just going to be a great time to to go along and to enjoy some of the artwork that local creatives have been able to put on. It should be hopefully a lot of fun. So more info on that soon. And actually next week we'll hopefully be interviewing Dan from Decreate, who is a local artist. He painted the mural on White Hart Street and also on the Isambard Kingdom Brunel shed by the station. And he's been one of the key figures involved in setting this exhibition up. So hopefully we'll speak to him next week. So I'm going to leave you with this track. It's a new single called Heart of Red by a band called Halvar. They're a band of teenagers from in and around High Wycombe. They're actually currently practicing at Wycombe Arts Centre for... they've got some big plans coming up. I don't want to spoil what they all are, so just check them out on facebook.com/Halvar Band, HALVAR Band. But yeah, they've shown a lot of really cool early promise and they're sounding pretty tight at the moment. So let's listen to Heart of Red. I will see you next week.
Every single day I try not to get onto your
This is Wycombe Sound.